Week 3 of the 2019 college football season has came and went. Hard to believe if your team has played 3 games, and most of our teams have, the regular season is 25% of the way over already. It goes by way too fast. But it's Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. I hope you guys got a chance to check out the Your Season is Over video this morning. I know a lot of you did. And a lot of you are teetering on the edge of insanity. Uncle Lou's got you shaking mad. Listen, some of you guys need to not watch any more videos the rest of this week and just come back next week, because today was the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I'm not going to apologize for anything. That's not what I do here, but I am going to give you a fair warning. Today was the tip of the iceberg. If you got this mad over what you saw today, then you're just going to completely be beside yourself several times over the course of the next week. So just, do your blood pressure a favor. Take a week vacation from YouTube. Come back on Monday. Try again next week. But anyway, it is Sunday evening. You know what that means. It's time for an updated version of the Uncle Lou Top 10 list. Let's go. All right, there wasn't a whole lot of interesting matchups this week within the top 10. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know if you paid any attention yesterday to some of these games that we saw. But as usual, I'm going to put last week's top 10 list up on the screen so you guys sort of have an idea of where I was starting from this week in case you didn't see last week's top 10 video. Then we'll go through this week's top 10 team by team. And as usual, as I get to each team, I'll take a few minutes and give you my overall thoughts on that team and who they're playing this week. Now, we do have some good games within the top 10 coming up this week, so there'll be major changes in the top 10 next week. But anyway, here's last week's top 10 so you can see, and I'll just rattle it off for you real quick here. Central Florida, I explained that last week. I'm leaving Central Florida at number 10 until they lose a game. They're not going any higher than that. I don't care what they do, and they're not going any lower. So that's just what it is. I mean, I'll talk about them when we reveal this week's poll a little bit more. I had Wisconsin at number 9. I'm higher on Wisconsin than everyone else is. I had Notre Dame at 8. I had Michigan at 7. Mixed bag on Michigan. Some people hate them. Some people still think they're an okay team. We'll see. They play a tough game this week. OU. Then I had LSU at 5, and my top 4 was Ohio State, UGA, Bama, and Clemson. That's what it looked like last week. Let's figure out what it looks like this week. All right, coming in at number 10, no surprise, Central Florida. I told you I'm leaving them at 10. I don't care. They can win every game by 1 point or 100. They're staying at number 10 in my poll, unless they lose a game, in which case they'll fall out of the top 10. They're not making a playoff. We all know that. It doesn't matter whether you or me or all of us or whatever think that that's fair. We just know it's not happening, okay? They can go 12-0, 13-0 again with a conference championship game. They're not cracking the top 4 in the playoff poll. It's just not happening. Like I said, doesn't matter whether you think it's fair or not. That's just reality. I'm leaving them at number 10 as long as they're undefeated. They're never going any higher. That's just is what it is. They completely dismantled Stanford at home this week, a Stanford team that had lost a week before to Southern Cal. So make it at what you will. Southern Cal went out this week, of course, and lost to BYU. Is BYU any good? Well, probably not. How do we know that? They barely beat Tennessee, and we know what we know about Tennessee. So, you can decide on your own what you think about UCF. My feelings are perfectly clear. I think they're a really good team. I think on any given day, especially given 1 month to prepare, like we see in these New Year's 6 games, UCF is good enough and has the potential to compete and possibly beat almost any team in America. I still think if you put UCF in a conference, they lose 2 or 3 games a year. It's totally different when you only have to play 1 or 2 tough games a year versus running through a conference slate every single year. It just is. I'm not making excuses. I'm not pumping up Central Florida. I'm not trying to beat them down. That's just my honest opinion of a Central Florida. I'm leaving them at 10. At number 9 this week, Wisconsin. Again, they were off. They didn't play. They play Michigan this week, though. I'm higher on Wisconsin than most other people are. Listen, I don't know how much, if any, you watched of Wisconsin play their first couple of games. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in America. Wisconsin's got a great offensive line. Their quarterback, to me, looks a lot better than the quarterback they've had the last couple of years, that Alex Hornibrook guy. He wasn't very good. Defensively, I think they've given up 6 points all year. One shutout, and I think they gave up 6 points in their second game. Maybe off a little bit on those numbers, but I think that's about right. About 6 points. So they've played good defense. Well, who have they played? Maybe you didn't hear me. They've given up 6 points all year. It doesn't matter who they played. Come on. You give up 6 points over a 2-game period, you're doing pretty good. They play at home this week against Michigan, and they're currently a 3.5-point favorite. So I might not be as dumb as some of you thought by ranking Wisconsin in my top 10 last week. If they beat Wisconsin, they'll be in there. If they beat Michigan, they'll be in everybody's top 10. I think I forgot to mention, but Central Florida plays on the road this week at Pitt. So a chance for them to go back-to-back with 2 wins against Power 5 teams. I know they're not the greatest Power 5 teams in the world, but let's be real. A lot of these big Power 5 teams are not going to be scheduling Central Florida. It's just not going to happen. I'm a Georgia fan. I can tell you right now, Georgia's not scheduling them. Alabama's not scheduling them. Ohio State won't schedule. Nobody's going to schedule Central Florida. It's a no-win situation. If you beat Central Florida, no one will be impressed. They're just going to say, well, we knew that. They're Central Florida. We knew they couldn't compete. If you happen to lose to them, though, you'll never hear the end of it. So it's a no-win situation. So you're not going to see any of these top teams schedule them. So they got to do the best they can do, which is your Stanfords and your Pitts of the world. They'll go on the road and blow out Pitt, I'm sure. I don't understand. They're still not getting a whole lot of respect here. They were about a 10-point favorite yesterday over Stanford, and they beat them by 3 or 4 touchdowns. They're only a 10-point favorite this week over Pitt, a Pitt team that couldn't beat Penn State last week. Anyway, UCF minus 10 looks good. I don't know. I'll do my predictions later in the week. So anyway, UCF 10, Wisconsin 9. Talked about them already. Number 8, Michigan. Don't bother telling me in the comment section that Michigan is overrated and they're terrible and they have no offense and they look bad. And for week, it doesn't matter. They play Wisconsin this week, okay? So if they're that bad, they'll lose, and then they'll be out of the top 10 because I don't put one-loss teams in my top 10 in the month of September. I just don't do it. As long as there's enough legitimate undefeated teams to keep in my top 10, I only have undefeated teams in my top 10 for at least the first month or so of the season. So listen, either Wisconsin or Michigan, if you hate one of those and think they shouldn't be where they're at, don't worry. Wait 7 days. One of those teams is losing next week because they play each other. Like I said, Michigan's got to go on the road, play at Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a 3-point favorite right now, 3.5 point home favorite right now. Wouldn't surprise me if it went a little bit higher. We'll see. It's going to be a good game. One of the games of the week next week for sure. So you got you a top 10 matchup here, at least in the UNCLELOU poll. Wisconsin, I don't think is in the top 10 in any other poll, but they are in mine. Number 7, I have Notre Dame. So they dropped, did they drop down? No, they moved up a spot, didn't they? Where did I have them at last week? I had them 8 last week. So, I flip-flopped Notre Dame and Michigan. The only real reason I did that is because Michigan was off and didn't play yesterday, so they didn't have a chance to impress me or disappoint me. Notre Dame played something called New Mexico, started out a little sluggish in the first half of that game, ended up blowing them out. So I flip-flopped Michigan and Notre Dame. Notre Dame, of course, has the big game this coming up week on the road at UGA. UGA opened up as a 12.5-point favorite. If you've been listening to me at all over the last 6 months, you know I think that's too low. I think Georgia's winning this game by 17 to 20 points. I've been saying it all off season. I haven't seen anything this season from either team to change my mind. In fact, I'm even more confident now than I was in the offseason when I made that prediction. Notre Dame can't stop a nosebleed when it comes to their defensive, defense against the run. They're currently ranked 120th in America against the run. I don't care how much you hate Georgia or how little you actually know about college football. If there's one thing everyone knows about the University of Georgia and doesn't doubt, it's that Georgia can run the ball, okay? We probably have 4 NFL running backs on this team and the best offensive line in college football. And even if you want to argue that point, that it's not the best offensive line, at worst, it's top 5. At worst. So this is not a good matchup for Notre Dame, in my opinion. Georgia hasn't lost a home game since 2016. I could talk an hour about this game, and I will over the course of this week here. But this really isn't a trash-talking video or anything here, so I'm just trying to give you some football facts here. Notre Dame does not match up well. It's on the road. Georgia's great at home. It's a night game. Notre Dame's not winning that game. Number 6, I have OU. They're off this week. They completely dismantled UCLA. That was no surprise to anybody. Why does Chip Kelly have a job? I don't know. That offense that he had at Oregon 10 years ago worked because it was new. Now, people had ran some versions of a hurry-up offense prior to that, but not the way it's run now. Chip Kelly invented that sort of offense 10 or 12 years ago at Oregon, running 100 plays a game and all that kind of thing. And at the time, defenses didn't know how to defend it. Defenses were getting wore out. I mean, they even changed the rules in college football because of that Chip Kelly offense. These substitution rules that they have now where if the offense substitutes in between plays, they have to give the defense time to substitute. They can't make a quick substitution and then snap the ball immediately before the defense has a chance to substitute. You'll see the referee stand over the top of the ball with his arms out, and the offense isn't allowed to snap the ball if the offense has made a substitution. Then they have to allow time for the defense to do it. So, give Chip Kelly credit for sort of reinventing or inventing an offense 10 or 12 years ago that caught college football by surprise, and he won a bunch of games. People are used to defending that type of offense now. Plus, he just doesn't have the talent at UCLA. They've got one of the worst offenses in the Power 5. It's just hard to watch. No one goes to the games. They gave away tickets to the Oklahoma game this past weekend. That's how bad it's gotten. Every single season ticket holder at UCLA was given 4 free tickets to give out to their friends just to try to beg people to come to the game, and it still didn't work. If you watched any of that game on TV, it seemed like there was more empty stands than there were stands with people in it. So Oklahoma rolled. No one was surprised. I told you last week, Oklahoma is staying at 6 in my poll. I don't care how bad they beat people. It doesn't matter to me. Until Oklahoma gets a top 50 defense, I'm not ranking them higher than 6th unless and until there's not enough undefeated teams for me to keep them at 6. If I have to move them up because teams ahead of them are losing, I'll move them up. But their defense it's still, does it look a little bit better than last year? Sure, but they were 120-something last year. They improved by 50 or 60 spots. They're still sitting at 70. So this is where they're staying at in my poll until something changes. Number 5, I have LSU again this week. They dismantled a nobody yesterday, Northwestern State. Another team that started off kind of slow. That was kind of to be expected, and I talked about that a little last week with both LSU and Texas coming off that big emotional game the week before that LSU won on the road at Texas. I said, it wouldn't surprise me. You see both LSU and Texas sort of come out with a little bit of a hangover. You see that sometimes after a big game when you have to show up and play a nobody, which is what LSU and Texas had to do. But LSU ended up winning that game comfortably. They play on the road this week, an SEC matchup at Vandy. So shouldn't be much of a test there. They opened up this morning as a 22-point favorite on the road at Vanderbilt, but I've got them at number 5 again. Number 4, didn't change. Ohio State, Justin Fields, different verse, same as the first. Another day at the office. Another day of almost 300 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns, making all the throws. Running around, he's completing 75-80% of his passes. He's a Heisman Trophy candidate. It doesn't matter how mad that makes you, Georgia fans. It's just the reality. You can, blame it on whatever you want. I know all the Georgia fans are with the who has he played thing, which is, just ridiculous. Again, check the stats. It doesn't really matter who you played. You're putting up those kind of numbers is pretty good no matter who you're playing. And he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. Blame it on the system they run there, the offensive design, whatever you want to say. But point is, he's putting up insane numbers. Ohio State continues its stretch of insane out-of-conference competition here. What a miracle it would be if Ohio State managed to go undefeated in the non-con this year with all these juggernauts they've scheduled. But this week, they host something called Miami of Ohio, which may or may not be a little bit better or worse than Miami of Florida, the Hurricanes, who had a big win this weekend over some kind of cooking college, a female cooking college, I think, Beth Cooking or something. I don't know. I don't know. Betty Crocker's distant cousin or something. Anyway, they play Miami of Ohio. They're a huge, 38-point favorite. They'll roll again. You already know. Number 3, of course, I left Georgia at number 3 this week. Completely dominated and outmatched Arkansas State team this past weekend. I think we had 5 running backs that averaged over 6 yards per carry in that game. Just ridiculous. Passing game looked pretty good too. We missed on a few deep balls, but I was just glad to see us attempt some deep balls, stretch the field. Jake Fromm had almost 300 yards passing. Still a lot of dinks and dunks and then yards after the catch, but I'm not complaining. The passing game did open up this week. 20 attempts as opposed to 11 the week before, which is what I wanted to see, get some of these young receivers some more reps, things like that. We did that. We did have an injury. Looks like Tyler Simmons is going to be out for a while. I haven't heard any sort of confirmation on that, but it didn't look good. An arm injury, shoulder injury. Didn't look good. Wide receiver, probably out for a while, would be my guess. Other than that, as far as I'm aware, we got out of the game without any other injuries. So big home game this week against Notre Dame. Already talked about it. UJ opened up as 12.5-point favorite. If you like Georgia in this one, get on that now. I think it's going to go over 14. Number 2, I left Bama there. I considered switching Georgia and Bama. I really did. And I'm going to be honest with you. The only reason I didn't switch them is because I didn't feel like reading 1,000 comments about me being a homer. I think Georgia has looked like a better football team this year so far than Alabama. I just have. I just feel that way. I haven't been impressed with Alabama's running game. I haven't been impressed with Alabama's ability to stop the pass. And yesterday they even had trouble stopping runs up the middle at times. Tua can throw a deep ball to wide open receivers like nobody's business, and he can throw a slant to 3 of the best wide receivers in all of college football. I don't know. I'm not knocking Alabama. They dominated an SEC team on the road. That's never easy to do. In comparison to Georgia, though, I honestly feel like Georgia has looked like a better team this year. But Bama did dominate on the road, and I don't want to read all the homer comments, so I left Bama at number 2. They host Southern Miss this week. This is the infamous crybaby game. This is the noon game, the one that got Nick Saban's and Alabama's athletic director's panties all up in a wad, crying and bitching and moaning and making up lies about the number of noon games they play because their students are sick and tired of sitting around watching Alabama beat things called Southern Miss 60-0. And rather than Nick Saban and Alabama admitting that they know they're scheduling crappy home games and that's why people aren't staying or coming to the games, they're trying to blame it on the SEC office and the TV networks for scheduling noon games, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Suck it up, get you a Kleenex or something. This is big boy football. It must be a state of Alabama thing. Auburn cry, bitched and moan about their schedule, called the SEC office, got their schedule rearranged so they don't have to get beat by Georgia in November anymore. I think Bama's trying to do a similar thing with noon games. I don't know what's going on there. And I left the Taters at number 1. Clemson completely destroyed Syracuse. I don't know what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. 5 touchdowns this year, 5 interceptions. That's more interceptions than he had all of last year, or maybe the same amount. Maybe he had 5 last year. It wasn't more than that, though. I don't know what's going on. If you guys have watched a lot of Clemson games this year, he hasn't looked sharp. He hasn't looked accurate. Even some of the completions that he does have, a lot of the completions that he does have are amazing catches by the wide receivers. I mean, we talk about Alabama's wide receivers all the time. Clemson's got some studs, too. And another one coming off a knee injury, this Amari Rodgers. Yeah, I think he had a touchdown yesterday, too. He looked really good in that game. But, of course, you got Justin Ross and T. Higgins there, too. These guys can make these acrobatic circus catches. But if you've watched Clemson play, now Travis Etienne looks like one of the best players in America. So this ain't Clemson. I just hate Clemson. That's not what it is. Travis Etienne has looked like one of the best players in America. I would take any of their wide receivers on my team without question. Their defense seems to be playing better than I thought it would, especially early in the season. I thought they may struggle up front replacing all that NFL talent. That hasn't been the case. So this isn't a hate Clemson thing. I've heard from some Clemson fans who are willing to be honest, and, they see the same things I see. Trevor just doesn't look as clean and as crisp and as accurate as he did last year. Is it a sophomore slump? Is it the fact that Clemson got caught with the juice last year, and so now they're all scared to take it, so Trevor's off the juice, so he's not performing as well? I don't know what it is. I just know when I watch Clemson play this year, Trevor Lawrence does not look as good as he looked last year. Now, he set the bar so damn high last year. I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that Trevor Lawrence has looked terrible this year. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. I'm just trying to tell you that compared to where he was at last year, he's not there. Now, wherever you want to say, however close you want to argue that he might be to that is up to you, but I don't think he's at the level he was at last year so far. We'll see. Still early in the season. He's got plenty of time to get it together. They don't play another meaningful game until January, so plenty of time to work that out. They host something called Charlotte this week. They'll win by 1,000,000 points, but for some reason they're only favored by 41, probably because Trevor Lawrence has 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. I don't know. Anyway, that's the top 10 for this week. If you're triggered, be sure and let me know down below. I'm sure that some of you are. And again, just one more disclaimer. If what you saw in this morning's Your Season Is Over video rubbed you the wrong way, pissed you off, hurt your feelings, triggered your I'm offended gene, whatever it was, don't watch the videos the rest of the week, because I'm just being upfront and honest with you now. They're all going to be worse than what you saw today. So anyway, appreciate you guys watching. Be sure and tell me down below that I never played football or probably have never even watched a game, and that this is the dumbest top 10 you've ever seen. And I'll see you guys again real soon. Have a good morning.